Hey everybody, this is Perch. A long time ago, I remember sitting in a meeting and the group was basically presenting on portrayals of a character. Now, I'd done a lot of work in comics and I talked to a lot of comic creators, and I'd certainly talked to a lot of people who've done licensed comics, things like Alf or Indiana Jones or, any of these various books. And one of the common stories that people have, I mean, you've heard some of them here on the air. I think Kari Andrews in his interview talked about this. I know Aaron Sparrow has talked about this for his there, and there's been others where the studio or the rights holder of the character will say things like, "Hey, you can't have the character doing that. Like, you can't have the character, drinking whiskey in the comic because we're trying to sell this to kids." Okay, fine. There's different reasons why you get interference or quality control or whatever you want to call it. But one of the more common ones that tended to frustrate creators, at least artists I talked to, was the idea of staying on brand. And so what was happening in this meeting was they're saying, like, would this character ever wear a jacket? And the conversation went around for a very long time. And ultimately the decision was made, no, the character doesn't wear jackets. It's a cartoon character you're all familiar with. Um, and then there became but here's this one time back in the, early 80s where the character was seen wearing a matching jacket with his girlfriend. And it's like, yeah, there are portrayals out there, but, to stay on brand, the character can't wear a jacket. I remember thinking kind of how absurd this was that it's a cartoon character. We're not even talking about like continuity or a story element or anything like that. We're talking about just the visual look of the character. But this is taken very seriously if the character is reasonably popular, or if they're hoping to make a lot of money off merchandising and licensing and everything else. It's really important that the characters stay the same. You see this even in things where, creators arguably are not taking things that seriously. So Rick and Morty, the characters are wearing the same clothes. You'll notice they tend to always wear the same clothes. Every now and then they go on adventures and the clothes change, but oftentimes they're wearing their same outfits. Now, the creators of Rick and Morty and kind of that whole show is, I mean, they break the fourth wall. They do all kinds of things in that show. And so you could argue they clearly don't take the brand seriously, except even there's an attempt to use the same color shirt, the same style clothes, all that kind of stuff. Because visually they want the episodes need to flow from one to the other. They also don't bring in kind of random artists and writers and say, you know what, in this one, we're going to have Morty just be, really self-confident and intellectual. And this next one, we're going to make him horny and confused. And the next one, like, there is an attempt to keep the personalities also the same. Sometimes they do this because, they want to be able to tell different stories where every now and then something happens to Morty. He gets brainwashed, sent through a matrix, whatever it happens to be. And, it's jarring that he's now a different person to some extent. But that's why they do this kind of stuff. It's brand consistency is a very long-winded way of saying all that. So what does this have to do with comics? Well, there's an argument that happens, and keep in mind, I'm completely of the opinion that this argument is a bit phony. The people making it are not reading comics. They're not invested in comics. They're just there to argue and, they try and kind of dehumanize other people. But when you take characters and you radically change them or shift them, the fans tend to react poorly. Now, I'll give you an example because I was thinking about this. There's two gay couples. By the way, there's tons of examples of this in comics with characters, and it's one of the reasons why you get into these arguments about continuity. Is it important? Is it not? And if you talk to a lot of creators, they will tell you that continuity is annoying, let's say. There's different schools of thought on the subject, but pretty commonly you'll hear creators talk about how annoying continuity is, how it's the noose around their neck, how it doesn't allow them to do free things, and you get lesser characters as a result. It's just, they complain about it, and it's hard not to hear those complaints and think, these guys just don't want to do the study work to understand the character, or they want to write it in their own way, or they have their own idea for a story with their own kind of original characters, but they can't sell their original characters, so they're going to hijack Spider-Man and cram their original story onto him and change his personality all around to do it. But these two, but going back, okay, I want to point out because it often gets the dialogue of, oh, you had a straight character and then the straight character became gay and this violates continuity and everything else. But the fans who are saying that are hateful homophobes, and you get into those arguments. So let me use a different example, which proves the exact same point. Two gay couples. One is Apollo and Midnighter, and one is Hulkling and Wicket. And why those two? Well, first off, in both cases, and I've seen some people do it. I saw some idiot trying to do the they pulled the rug out from under us and made these characters gay. No, they didn't. I mean, they did not. And you're talking about something that occurred immediately. I be honest, I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was issue 1. If not, it was issue 2 of Young Avengers. It was revealed that Wiccan and Hulkling were gay and in a relationship together. Similarly with Midnighter and Apollo, that was Stormwatch. And again, it wasn't the first panel, but it was really early on. Really early on. I'm talking, a couple issues at most. But I may be in the first issue. I need to go back and look. But it was right away. Both these characters were established. All 4 of these characters were established as gay and in a relationship together. It is not accurate to say that the comic companies, did a bait and switch. I saw somebody try to make the argument of but the posters, the advertising posters for Young Avengers didn't say they were gay. Okay, you got me. Still image with no words and a logo as a promo piece of art for a comic coming out in a couple months. Did I have a big arrow pointing toward Wiccan that said gay? But the story revealed, reveals maybe the wrong word. It introduced them as gay. But as it turns out, and I know this is a crazy concept, people who are gay have different personalities. Just like everybody else, there's a lot of different types of gay people, just like there's a lot of different types of straight people. In comics, and I used to make the argument, still do a little bit, that a Brian Michael Bendis would write all the characters sounding the same. If you were Captain Marvel, or you were Iron Man, or you were Luke Cage, the dialogue all kind of sounded the same. But the majority of writers out there, the characters are distinctly different. There's Storm versus Colossus versus Wolverine in the X-Men all had different things going on. Sometimes cliche things going on. You'd have, it was a couple of the shortcuts Chris Claremont used to use. Bub, yeah, okay, that's Wolverine. Let's just throw a little random German here for Nightcrawler and a little random Russian here for Colossus, and Storm will say, "Oh my goddess," and or "by the goddess," or something with goddesses, and all the but besides just the dialogue, the characters were written differently. Wolverine, you were not surprised when he would go out on a bender and get drunk. And Storm, you were not surprised when she had a greenhouse and go meditate up there. And Colossus is, the tough brawler, but he's outside by the X-Men lake drawing a picture. Everybody had their own thing. Same thing with Midnighter, Apollo, Wiccan, and Hulkling. They were unique characters. You read Young Avengers, and you read, Stormwatch that then became the Authority, or, then they were in the Authority. There was a very big difference between Midnighter and Apollo. And this works. If you look at the sales of both these comics, Young Avengers and the Authority, in both cases, they sold really well. Fans accepted them. Somehow, some way, all these homophobes that are in comics, all these disgusting comic book store owners, these people who just can't accept gay characters, they accepted those 4 just fine, and they were immedly they were immediately announced and revealed and written as gay. So, why did it work for them? And then more importantly, why, as years go on and they write other stories, the personalities, it's getting back to what I said at the beginning, the the sticking to the brand changed. You had the Young Avengers, and you had a distinct style to that book through the series, through Children's Crusade, and kind of other versions of that title that would come out. But then years later, when they did a Marvel Infinite comic with Hulkling and Wiccan, this is long after Hulkling is like the Emperor of Space. They wrote the characters. Suddenly Wiccan is like this doting, unsure, goofy character, and they were leaning into, heavy shows of affection between the two. And people complained. And then predictably people said, if you're complaining, you're just a bigot. And then if they gave a little bit more thought to it, you'd get one of my favorite answers of all time. Well, why can't we have both? You can't have both because there is continuity, and these characters do have a personality. Think about how stupid of a comment that is. You can't have both. It's like, why can't we have a Batman that just runs around just shooting people with guns? It's like, well, you do have that, an absolute Batman. Yeah, okay, so absolutely. You can, no pun intended, you can take the character, put him in a different universe. You got the multiverse sitting there, which frankly is overused, but you got it there. You could do different versions of things. Alternatively, you could do what they did in Batman, where you have the Bat Family Adventures over on Webtoon, and you write that for that audience, and it's very successful there. But if you took the Bat Family Adventures and you went in and said, Chip Zdarsky's run, the next issue will be Bat Family Adventures, I don't want to hear, the person in the comments going, oh, I think that'd be fine. Oh, fuck off. No, you don't. No, you don't. You ruin the character and the brand for everyone else when you do that. Putting it in Webtoon, putting it in a separate book, putting it in a separate universe, and writing for a very distinct audience can work, makes sense. Taking the character and going so severely off-brand with it that the character no longer is recognizable is not. That destroys their core product. If you take kind of Mickey Mouse, okay, the character I was talking about at the beginning, if you take that character and you say, why can't we have a Mickey Mouse who's gay? Why not? Well, one reason, and just in the, if you were doing a separate universe story somehow, but even then Disney would never allow you to do it, the people, as much as, Minnie is hanging around, they really don't want you thinking about Mickey Mouse in a relationship with anybody, straight or gay. But regardless, if you said, why can't we have that? Why can't we have a brawler Mickey, a Mickey that's just going to go in there and start, punching people? Why can't we have a Mickey who's an alcoholic? And why can't we have, you can't, if you do that, you wreck the brand, you wreck the character. You do need to have some consistency because you want to lean on that character and tell more stories. So why are people reacting when you have Midnighter and Apollo in a Pride book, and both of them are like going on a Pride march and, tickling each other and being cute? Why does that bother people? It bothers people because they're so far off from the characters that, we were introduced to, that people loved. I'm not going to deny you that there's, a person out there who's just pissed about it because they're gay. But that, just like the people arguing that, hey, you could have why not have something for everyone? Just like those people, the people who are complaining that Midnight or Apollo are gay they don't read comics. Let's not pretend that those people are comic fans, because they're not. Because you can't sit there and go, oh yeah, I hate the fact these characters are gay. Yeah, they've been gay since panel 1. They've always been gay. There was no trick pulled on you. They're gay. Wiccan and Hulkling, always. You can certainly make the argument, and I've made on this show and others have, about Bobby Drake and kind of what went on there. But for a lot of these characters, they were established as gay, but they were also established as three-dimensional human characters that made money and were popular. And you can't really get pissed at audiences for going, yeah, we liked it when they were three-dimensional characters and had full personalities and everything. We like that. We'd like that. And you can't really complain when you write them in a shallow parody of themselves in the main universe and say, yeah, I'll be fine. Who cares? It's different portrayal. Why can't there be both? It's a dumb argument. There can't be both. Or you have to follow very established rules to get there. Again, Bat Family Adventures sells well. Very different version of Bruce Wayne and the family. Even there, you could argue that the portrayal of Bruce Wayne and the Robins and everybody else is actually closer to the kind of primary version of Batman than other attempts have been. But continuity, brand continuity, character continuity, they're important. And when you preserve them and when you pay attention to them, you get a chance to tell lots and lots of stories based off of those characters and those ideas. And that's a powerful, good concept. What happens now is just a free for all of a writer comes in and they have something. They basically, I want to have a story of two guys tickling each other. I know, let's use Midnight or Apollo. And there's nobody raising their hand to go, hey, that doesn't make sense for those characters. Those are not the characters to do it. Do we have other characters that could be could be in that kind of story? Yeah, you have plenty actually. You do have some. I don't know. I've gotten into heavy arguments with people over this idea of, why can't it be both? Why can't you just have why can't you just make it up as you go? Why can't the character be whatever you want it to be? What's the harm? Well, the harm is, there's a reason why a bunch of people are sitting around a table contemplating, could Mickey have a jacket or not? There's a reason for that. You need that instant recognizability. You need that licensable material. You need something that, is gonna be able to provide additional money opportunities and additional sales long term. You need the ability for other writers to come in and be able to quickly kind of adapt and, tell stories. And if you just constantly peel all that stuff backward, you get into a bad place. It's to me, it's a very simple topic. I probably made it more complicated than I need to be here. But the goofy part of the people who come in and intentionally misunderstand what you're trying to say. So on all fronts, if I break it down one last time, Midnight Apollo, Hulkling, and Wiccan, gay from the start. Okay, no switcheroo, no shenanigans there. For many issues in the Authority and Young Avengers, written, I mean, it's subjective, of course, but I'm going to say written well, and the sales reflected that. Comics sold well, people liked it. No indication that the fact they were gay was a problem. Back to the contrary, comic did great. Future versions, years later, the characters in main continuity in the main universe, not in a webtoon version or some other split off area, start writing the characters dramatically different. There's almost a parody of a gay couple as you would see them on Family Guy. Fans, didn't like that, didn't accept it. Pretty obvious, all those steps. The arguments of, hey, well, you're just hateful. No, they just like the characters. And frankly, I think they like the characters and they're more supportive of a gay couple than these newer fans who just want the characters written every which ass way. These are fans, these are customers who support these characters for 20 odd years. And to me, that shows a higher level of commitment. Anyway, thanks for listening.